Hey, so here we are, watching who can make the most money in 3 days. As an idea for a competition, I've always liked this one. Making money is something everyone would want to be able to do quickly and easily, so this is kind of fun. Unfortunately, I think the episode suffers a little bit from its own design. Um, Kenny has a clever idea, which is to sell airtime from the episode, but that's kind of boring to watch. So it's like he's purposely sacrificing the episode in order to win, and ultimately he doesn't. Now, after a rewatch or two, I have come around a little bit, and I think that the ad segments are actually a charming time capsule of a different era. And as someone that likes obscure media from that era, it's fun to see. So this is an example of an episode that actually aged well, in my opinion. But I recognize that I'm a little weird in that I enjoy watching old commercials and obsessing over minutia. But you're listening to some guy comment on a 20-year-old cult reality show, so you're not too normal either. One of the critiques I have of episodes in general is whether or not the premise is unique. And I think that on one hand, watching people try to make money is definitely not unique. However, when people are usually trying to make money, they're trying to do it in a sustainable way by writing a resume and applying for a job and stuff. So seeing two people try to make as much money as quickly as possible, no matter what, that's actually kind of unique, and that's part of why I like this episode. I also like the episode because there's a lot of good, like, pathetic Spenny moments. I mean, even winning by gambling is kind of a pathetic thing. Also, there are only, like, 3 episodes in the series where they try to see who can get the most of a thing, like a physical thing. There's this episode. They also try to make money and sell more Bibles, and then when they produce semen. And in Bibles, there isn't actually an honest effort from either of them to sell the Bibles, and in semen, Spenny doesn't really participate. So Spenny's ad in the paper shows an unusual amount of preparation for him. He must have designed the ad, called it in, had it printed, whatever. I don't know how you get stuff in the paper. But he did all of that in the time leading up to the episode starting, which is actually pretty impressive for him.
Like a cobra, man. The cobra sits and waits.
Okay, so Spenny's paintings. Spenny created 3 paintings: the stigmata, the Jackson Pollock looking one, and the one that looks like an open hot dog bun. And he gave the stigmata and the Jackson Pollock to a friend of his who loaned him money. He also gave him a guitar and the Spenny puppet from the Christmas special. Okay, so behind Kenny's monitor is a framed photo. You can kind of see Spenny. See there on the left? He's standing in front of like a door. I've seen the full photo. It's a picture of Kenny, Spenny, and Martin Short. So one thing I've always wondered is, like, where does Kenny get this picture of Spenny? Obviously, there's been some manipulation to it, but that looks like hairy Spenny from before the show. So does Kenny just, like, have a picture of him shirtless and facing the camera somewhere?
The money you give him or give me will go to a very, very good cause.
So the buckets are an early case where Kenny has a tactic that's not really that effective, but it's going to be funny and it's going to slander or annoy Spenny, so he does it for that reason. And then he pulls out his actual effective strategy later, which is selling the airtime. He does that in, a couple episodes. More than a couple, really. Kenny mentions at the end of the episode that he made like $5 from the charity buckets after spending $10 on them. So, it really wasn't a great strategy. But like I said, I don't think it was meant to be effective. He was basically just paying $5 to annoy Spenny, which is a bargain.
Donation drive for a friend who's in need.
It actually occurred to me in this moment, doing this commentary, that who can be homeless the longest has a bit of a redux of this competition, where they both panhandle. Well, Kenny does jokingly, and then they try to get money to live their new life on the streets. That's kind of interesting.
And you're gonna give my father. You want to give my father a heart attack?
That competition doesn't really rely on that aspect directly, but you know what I mean.
Didn't have to see the ad, Kenny. Have you made any money yet? Hello? But what the hell's he doing? What is he doing to earn money?
Okay, we gotta go see Spenny's cousin.
Good to see you. How are you? Long time.
I had always assumed that this guy was like a lawyer or something, but maybe that just says something about me. In fact, guy is the same one who runs the Video Service Corp, which we see later in the episode.
Now who do I make the check out to?
In fact, he signs this check on a stack of tapes. They mention that he's Spenny's cousin. You know, Spenny has a lot of cousins, including Bianca, as well as Seinfeld writer Marjorie Gross. So if you're a big Seinfeld fan, Marjorie appears as an extra in the Bette Midler episode of Seinfeld, and the episode The Foundation, which is about Susan dying and the Susan Ross Foundation being given to George and stuff, is dedicated to her because she died kind of young of ovarian cancer. In fact, the Fusilli Jerry episode, where Kramer gets the Ass Man license plate and stuff, was co-written by both of Spenny's cousins, Marjorie and that same guy, Jonathan Gross, which is pretty interesting. It's kind of his only like showbiz credit is co-writing that Seinfeld episode. And here he is giving Kenny money.
Airtime in the show. Because I've been given the okay to sell airtime, so I'm just sending out a mass.
I like that Kenny's email is being sent to everyone. Like it's not an address, it's just everyone. I already mentioned it earlier, but I'm like a total sucker for these early thousands or like late 90s internet pieces, user interfaces, media, and all that stuff. And that's one of the reasons I'm like so hooked into Kenny vs. Spenny, is because it takes place in the reality of that period. In fact, the video I made about Versusville is really a love letter to that era as well. It's not just about finding the game. I bring that up to say that like when you get to see Kenny on his computer or like typing into Microsoft Word or his email, I like it. And like I said before, the fact that this episode is a time capsule is what saves it for me. It's not a great episode, but it's a relic of a different time, a time that I love. And that's true for me for many reality shows of this era.
I'm here with Spenny's friend Mark.
I don't have too much to say about Mr. Case. They're doing well still, especially in or after the pandemic, when delivering large quantities of goods became popular or even necessary.
What do I get for it?
I have a national show on 30 million televisions, and
I'm going to spurg out a little bit about something incredibly asinine and minuscule here. Not that that's unusual for me. How real is the name Spenny? Like, I've never in my life heard of someone named Spencer being called Spenny, though I don't really know that many Spencers. Like, is that a Canadian thing? I bring it up because Mark of Mr. Case calls him Spencer. Spenny fills out his warehouse time card as Spencer. Sophie always calls him Spencer, and so on. So, like, is the name Spenny entirely fabricated so that it rhymes with Kenny? Or do people actually call him that? I don't know. Maybe I'm asking something obvious here. I'm definitely asking something unnecessary.
More money.
So it looks like this check says it's April 26th. This is Fred Levy. Fred is also still in the business. Earlier this year, the accounting firm he founded was acquired by a larger accounting company in Canada. Fred Levy is actually the brother of Eugene Levy, the comedian and actor. And he kind of looks like him, if you ignore the eyebrow disparity. I feel like having Eugene Levy's brother in the show is one of the closest like brushes with someone actually famous in an episode. Like there's Gavin McInnes, Mark Breslin, the Iron Sheik, Robert De Niro. Who else? Who in the show would be more famous? I mean, other than Kenny and Spenny, I guess. Nowadays, this guy is still running his managed service IT company, which is called Active Trade. He's also a realtor.
There you go.
I like this segment because if you need your Windows XP install authenticated, you just pop in that activation key behind it, and you'll be good to go. But really, it took me a little bit to realize like how weird this commercial was. The guy has like a little bit of a dramatic flair. He's got this whole commercial written out and choreographed. It takes place in his IT shop, but he's like advertising his sweaty hockey glove solution.
Keeping your hands smell, well, better than Kenny's.
Okay, so that check is dated April 24th. So this sequence is a little bit out of order. Alright, so let's play how else could this episode have ended. This question just helps me think about whether an episode is like a little too perfect or not. Though this episode ends on a statistical anomaly, where Spenny wins that bet at the horse track, I actually think it's pretty legit, and I'm going to talk about that more later. So, if Kenny had successfully claimed his ad money and not split it with Spenny, then he would have beat Spenny, despite Spenny's crazy win at the racetrack. Alternatively, if Spenny had lost at the racetrack, he would have lost the whole competition. Either way, I think. So I think any of those endings would be relatively satisfying. You know, if you see Spenny lose all his money on a horse, that would be funny. Kenny winning the ad argument would just flatten out that wrinkle and we'd be good there too. So I think this one's pretty foolproof. You know, what happens, happens, and I'm okay with that. That question is really just less interesting on these more straightforward documentary episodes because what happens is what happens. The two of them also don't really interact much in the episode, which is usually something I complain about, but it also means that their strategies aren't really reliant on each other. Like, what one does doesn't really rely on the other doing anything.
I am in an absolute funk, and I'm starting to get depressed. And that's not good for rose selling.
Michael, it's Kenny. I got your email about
Okay, so we are about to meet Purpleoid. Purpleoid is stylized with 2 capital P's and a capital L. After a bit of time, they changed their name to Euphorophonic, but they've since changed back to just being Purpleoid. The story I've made up in my head is that they weren't having much luck with the Purpleoid name, so they changed it, but then when they noticed that the only attention they were getting was from KvS fans that knew them as Purpleoid, they realized they needed to change it back. I'm not going to do any wacky antics for like all of these commentaries, but I did have an idea. I wrote to a music producer on Fiverr that my band needed some help with marketing, and I sent them this song specifically. I wrote, "I feel fairly good about the mixing and technical aspects. I am concerned most about the cultural appeal that it may have. $2,500 has already been spent on promotion for the band, and it hasn't found much success. I would be curious if the tone and content of the song comes across as too cheesy, or whether the issue has nothing to do with brand/marketing." And I actually got like a nice and thought out reply. I feel kind of guilty for lying to them that like Purpleoid was my band, and if somehow they hear this, they should know that I'm sorry. In the interest of throwing them off my trail, I submitted the song as having the name That Tickles, and this is what they had to say. "I don't think the song is cheesy at all. It was done really well and the guitar tones are killer. I love the song and I think it would be a great song to open a concert with. I wish that the rhythm was more consistent. It especially bothers me at the beginning of the song when I just want the momentum to keep moving and not stop right away." There were some other good comments and suggestions about the song and like what I should do about my band, but frankly they were just very like technical and straightforward and not funny. So now my halfway prank backfired and I just like kind of feel bad.
Selling roses and taking pictures turned out to be $75. I worked last night till about 1:30 in the morning. So the total for the entire competition so far is $145.13. I got a lot to do today, and I got to get ready, so.
So this girl claims she's Spencer's cousin and her daddy owns Video Service Corp. But as I mentioned earlier, her daddy is Jonathan Gross, who is also mentioned as Spencer's cousin. So she should really claim to be his first cousin once removed, if she wanted to be precise. And yes, Video Service Corp is still around. They're the distributors of the Criterion Collection within Canada, which is a pretty big deal. I think Spenno is like my favorite part of this episode. I don't know why Spenny has this fascination with clowns and he like thinks that people love clowns. And the fact that he like resents people for not liking him as a clown is extra funny. He's also not a good clown. Like Kenny would be a good clown. In fact, Who's the Better Clown would be a pretty great episode now that I think about it. Him taking back the balloon animal from the child of what is presumably a wheelchair-bound woman is pretty great here. And then Kenny just like calling it like it is and ratting on Spenny for being a creep is a pretty good response to this too. Spenno kind of moves around like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or like Igor or something. It's like he's trying to prance around with a spring in his step in order to inspire joy in all the children, but he just looks insane.
Yes, it's Spenny, the artist. Any luck? Nothing?
And Spenny like calling about his waste of space paintings while dressed as a clown in the middle of a town square is pretty amazing. It also references, you know, like a narrative plot about the paintings we saw earlier in the episode, and it's pretty like absurd in general. I guess it's kind of mean to call them waste of space paintings, but they kind of are. Like, they're gigantic and not very good. Like, a painting can be tiny. Why do you make them so big and like hard to move around? Because bigger means you can get more money for them, I guess? Like, does he know how art works? I kind of like the stigmata, actually, to be honest. It's simple enough, and the way the colors run together is kind of nice, but the other ones look like hell. I'm writing and recording this after I had COVID, so I'm like a little grumpy. You just gotta forgive me.
Make you holla, retard, and me love you long time. Don't people, don't they care?
So my pathetic performance has led me to the track where I'm going to gamble.
Spenny is about to put down all of his money on a horse named Petite Mermaid. This race occurred on April the 25th, so we have some more scenes out of order here. This is a pretty good example where the power of the narrative outweighs the precise realism. It's way more powerful to have this as the last scene than it is to see Kenny collect another check at the end, so they move it around. That's fine, it's inconsequential. This is Petite Mermaid's first win ever, of 2 wins total ever. She was first sold for $6,500, then again for $11,000. I don't know what any of that means because I know nothing about racing horses. Other horses competing in this race: Peekaboo Peak, Her Pot of Gold, which would have fit the episode theme better, Miss Combo, Saucy Viv, Shafira, Geomancer, and Inhera Mage. In the conversation about the show being real or fake, this is actually a pretty interesting example. So betting on the horse won Spenny this competition. We kind of talked about that. He risked it all and it paid off. It's a miracle. How would they have staged this? You watch him buy the ticket. You see the pamphlet. The horse is number 2. He confirms this with the lady at the desk. He shows us his ticket. The date of the race matches with when the episode shoots. It only makes sense that it's legitimate. The lady at the desk would have to be in on it or something. The odds of them conspiring to fake it outweigh the miraculous odds of the horse winning in the first place in the race. But I talk about this all the time, so enough of that.
Selling airtime on a show called Kenny versus Spenny, right?
An argument that you hear in interviews and stuff, and you still hear them have today, is that if Kenny had to split his money for the ads with Spenny, then Spenny would have had to split his money too. But that can't be right. If they both had to split their money, then they just like can't do this competition at all. Kenny has to split his money because he actually used the show to make it, and they own the show jointly. Even if that's not literally legally true, it makes sense for the episode.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okay, one other thing that comes up in the context of the show being real or fake is reshoots. And this next scene is maybe the only one I can say for certain is at least partially a reshoot. So first of all, you can read all the phone numbers on that dry erase board, like clear as day. That doesn't have anything to do with the reshoot, it's just Spenny having bad operational security. Secondly, in some shots, there's a $sign between the K and S in this little table he drew, and the pen and ink he's using switches between blue and black. See, this looks all blue, no $sign between the K and S. But give it a second.
Now we have to subtract the money we spent earning the money. I spent $10. That leaves me with $6.
Okay, so now like the top part looks black, there's a $sign between the K and S.
$15.69.
Okay, the dollar sign's still there. He's writing in blue ink.
Oh my God.
$234.31.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Spending
Now there's no dollar sign again between the K and S. So it's not just like Kenny decided to spice up the table midway through the tallying. Seems like they actually redid it for some reason and then cut between the two takes, you know, for clarity or whatever. It's completely inconsequential. He's just recording numbers. They probably screwed up some arithmetic or got frazzled or lost audio and had to reshoot a very technical portion of the episode. It's not a big deal whatsoever. But it is like a different take of them together, which is very rare. Okay, so here's something I didn't think much about until I was taking notes on this episode. Spenny spent $415 during the episode. Those large canvases have to be at least like $200 for the three of them. Then add another $50 for the paint, the brushes, and the plastic Patrick Bateman coveralls. Then he had to pay at least $20 to $50 for the hot Spenny ad and the paper. Add in renting a clown outfit, the two balloon animals, some roses. My point here is that the $415 does not include the $150 he bet on the horse. Like, he had to bet the $150, then he paid out the $16.50. So he really netted $1,500. So that means that if he didn't bet on the horse at all, he would have still been $250 in the negative. If he bet and lost, then he'd be over $500 in the negative. So he really was like totally boned if he didn't win on that horse. It was kind of his only option. Kenny didn't even have to really do anything except hope that Spenny didn't gamble it and just happened to win, which he did.
Caesar salad with that anchovy paste that made me sick. Well, there it is. He did.
I feel like everything in this commentary was like almost interesting. I said it earlier, but I liked this episode more now rewatching it than I used to, which is a nice surprise. I appreciate people listening and caring and commenting and stuff, so thank you.